This is the trick color 9, and it looks like this. So since this trick is almost completely a slack trick, you're going to want to make sure that you have almost perfect string tension before you ever attempt the trick. And to start, we're going to start with a trapeze. We're going to dismount off the trapeze into an undermount, and that's where we're going to begin the first slack. And once you hit the undermount, you're going to hit the undermount with your middle finger of your opposite hand, and you're also going to pinch the string with your thumb. Make sure that you don't use your index finger at all, so bring it back in. And you also want to make sure that you pinch just one string segment that's draped upon your middle finger. If you pinch both of them, the slack that we're going to create next isn't going to be able to swing out of the yo-yo like it should. So from here, you're going to continue swinging the string around your wrist, and you're going to swing the yo-yo in tandem until it hits into a wrist mount. And the timing of that can be pretty tough, but if you think of it just like you're performing the same motion as the second whip in our 3 whips, the kamikaze mount video, that's the timing that you're going to be having the same feeling with here. And so we're going to break it down into figuring out how to swing the slack first, and then I'll show you how to swing the yo-yo into the wrist mount. So to swing the slack, you're going to bring the slack around your wrist like this and make sure that your thumb is inserted into your wrist, and you're going to essentially throw the slack around so that way it lands on your opposite hand like you're doing a bridge whip in our off-string video, the bridge whip. And that is what the slack is going to do. And with the yo-yo, you're actually going to hold on to that pinch as you enter the undermount, and then you're going to continue holding on to the pinch, and you're going to swing the yo-yo in a nice slow arc that's going to land into the bottom string in between the 2 slack parts of your slack loop that you created with your yo-yo hand. So from here, you're going to want to practice each part of the slack separately, and eventually you're going to want to also practice throwing the slack and the yo-yo together so that way it lands in the wrist mount. But eventually you're going to have to be able to start in the undermount and throw the yo-yo into a wrist mount in one smooth slack element. And we got plenty of tips to help you be able to do this part of the trick, which is pretty difficult. The first one is that you're going to slow down as soon as you hit the wrist mount. And you'll notice that I'm not rushing the slack motion here and trying to get it out of the gap as quickly as possible. I'm exaggerating my hands a little bit and allowing the slack to slowly fall down, almost as if I'm stopping, but I'm still guiding the slack over so that way I have a little bit of momentum to use so that way I can throw the slack around into the wrist mount. The next one is you don't want to completely do the slack in front of your body like this. You're going to want to have it a little bit more to the outside, and that will allow the slack that you need to get into the wrist mount to form more nicely, and it will just feel a little more natural, and your hands will be able to move around in a more nicer way, and that will get the slack to form more gracefully. The next one is when you actually try to complete the wrist mount, you're going to want to be holding this pinch almost the entire time during the slack. So as soon as I start in the undermount, I'm swinging the slack over and hitting it in the bridge whip, but I'm also holding that pinch even as the yo-yo is in midair, and I'm going to let go of the pinch pretty much simultaneously when the yo-yo lands on that bottom string. And one last tip I can give you is when you're bringing the slack around your wrist and getting it into the bridge whip, is you want to make sure that the string coming from your yo-yo finger goes directly across and into the bridge rather than having it wrap around your fingers like this. And the way to avoid that is as soon as you're starting to bring the slack around your wrist, you gotta be able to bend your fingers in and curl them around in such a way that the string segment coming from your yo-yo finger here gets around your index finger, and that way when you throw it around, it will then form the bridge whip, and it will make the slack a lot more open and a lot more easier to catch it into the wrist mount. So once you land that slack into the wrist mount, you can then start the second and final slack of this trick. To begin, we are going to take our 4 fingers of our yo-yo hand and bring it towards the kink of the wrist mount until you grab onto the strings from the outside like this. And you don't want to pinch it with your fingers and make it feel like that you can't move the string around. You want to be able to have it slide in between your 4 fingers, right behind your knuckles. After you do that, you're then going to just pretty much do a regular dismount to a wrist mount. And after that, you are going to let go of the front string of the index finger of your yo-yo hand. And once you let go of that, that's going to start generating a slack here, and that's when you're going to start your second slack. Once that starts, you're then going to start bringing your hand around. And once you get the string to about here, you can then pop the yo-yo off and make them both swing around at the same time. And that's what the first revolution of that slack is going to be. After that happens, you're going to be in the downswing. You're going to slow down the downswing a little bit so that way you can swing this around a second time. Once you swing that around a second time, you're going to let go of that pinch, and then you are going to re-catch the pinch and then perform a jade whip motion. And if you haven't learned follow, knowing follow will make that unpinch and repinch a whole lot easier. And another tip I can give for you in terms of starting the slack is, like I said before, you don't want to pinch with these 4 fingers. So the pinch the entire time is going to happen with your thumb and index on the very top here. And when you swing around, that's going to undo the twist that's already in your hand, and then you have an easy time swinging this around. And that will just undo the knot. So once you start performing the jade whip motion, you're then going to have to not catch it in a regular jade whip, but you're going to have to set it up for the green triangle. And in order to do that, it's going to be a different motion in the jade whip in a few respects. Is number one, the knuckles here are not going to be facing in front of you. You're going to be facing your knuckles this way as soon as you grab that string again, so that way it looks like you're about to punch the other hand. That will allow the string to wrap around the yo-yo like this, so that way no strings end up in the gap of the yo-yo. So once you get it to about here, the string's going to have a hard time getting up and around the yo-yo like this, and sometimes the string will accidentally get in the gap. So there are a few tips in order to make sure that doesn't happen. Is number one, when you throw that jade whip motion, it's got to feel like you're doing a bridge whip and off string again. And you're going to help separate out that string so that way the inside part of the slack is being pushed back by the thumb of your opposite hand, and then the outside string is going to be just resting on top of the index finger of your opposite hand. And that will give you some more separation. Once you have that separation, the next thing that you're going to need to do in order to help it get into the gap is to pretty much have this pointer finger next to the yo-yo as you're going for the bridge whip. Once that happens, you're then going to pretty much draw a quarter of a circle like this away from the yo-yo. And that will generate the slack so that way it'll have enough to push over and then go in and create a kink, and then pulling it away like that will pull the strings tight at the right time. And that's how, even if you do swing it past, it won't accidentally swing back through again. Once that happens and you are into this kink formation here, all you're going to do is swing the yo-yo up into the middle string and swing it over your opposite hand like this. And a way to help you with that is to keep this thumb on this back string here and pull it back so that way you can separate the strings out. And notice that I have the ring and pinky finger here, and I'm going to stretch that out as well. So now I have all 3 string segments that are going across my hands separated from each other. Once you have that set up, you're going to hit the underside of the middle string, and once it touches the underside of the middle string, you're going to pretty much do a fish hook or a half circle type motion underneath the yo-yo as soon as it hits. And as you do that, you're going to be dropping 2 string segments off of the finger of your opposite hand. The first one is going to be the front string segment that is on the edge of your first finger. You're going to drop that off as soon as it hits the underside of this string. And you're also going to drop your thumb off as well, so that way it's just on your index finger, and then you can perform the half circle motion underneath the yo-yo, bring it back out, and then the green triangle will just end up on your index finger. Once that happens, you can just pop out the GT out of the front, and that should end up in a trapeze. If it doesn't have a perfect trapeze and there's some twists in it, What probably happened is when you started to do this fish hook motion, you curled your index finger in. And if that happens to you, just try to be a little more disciplined and keep your index finger pointed forward, and that will get rid of that problem and the twist will be gone. And also when you pop it up, make sure you don't curl your index finger in either, and that will help you keep the string twisting in check. And that's how you can dismount the perfect GT, and that is color 9.